And we're live.
Arturius, I hope you're ready to bleep this out. But Skip,
Yo.
I say, Jazz, are you gonna punch me?
Better yet, is the whole team gonna go after me if I do that, right? Because Gobert did not have a lot of backup in that huddle.
Nothing. Anyway, good
That trade
afternoon,
looks
good
better
morning,
and better
good
every day. Anyway, go on.
good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now. Just know that you are locked in onto the point with Hurry Up and Sip That.
Yep.
And the King. You guys know what to do. Find us Apple, Amazon, Spotify. Listen to us while you're doing whatever. Just audio, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, which is hopefully where you're watching us. Can you guys hook a couple brothers up? Hit subscribe, hit that bell. If you enjoy our content, maybe you can keep up with us. It's pretty hard to keep up with us because we have today a great mind that is very hard to keep up with. A young man with a grown man's brain way ahead of us. Shout out to my man, Charlie. How are you doing today, brother? And by the way, it's an honor and pleasure to have you back on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I'm doing pretty good. No complaints. We got some pretty meaningful basketball coming up. The weather's finally starting to get nice. Thankfully, I'm so done with winter. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's go.
Yeah, it's Passover, Easter, and Ramadan. I guess we're all celebrating.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, what's up, bro?
Not much. Just looking forward to the big play-in tournament and this long-ass playoff run for the Toronto Raptors.
Okay, well, that's what we're going to get into right now, okay? This is the reason why you guys click this thumbnail, because right now the Raptors are currently locked into the 9th spot for the play-in tournament, and they are poised to face against the 10th spot, which is the Chicago Bulls. Now, you're clicking on this because we all know one of the people that is beloved in the city and who I've cooked for, Skip, you've cooked for, DeMar DeRozan will be back. And Charlie, I want to start off with you. Now, with the Raptors actually getting into the 9th spot and holding that down, which is below expectations from us from the beginning of the season based on what they did last year, how do you feel about the Raptors playing against the Chicago Bulls and possibly coming out of that game to make it into the possible 8th seed to square off against one of the top tier teams in the Eastern Conference? Can we hear your thoughts, please, my friend?
Yeah, it's
It'd be
definitely,
the Bucks, by the way. Sorry, but go on.
yeah, I definitely think it is a bit of a disappointment. Coming into the season, the Raptors were projected to be, I think, 46 or 47 wins. So they've definitely underperformed the season. They had really high expectations with like rising star Scotty Barnes, young talent like Precious Achua, just drafted Christian Coloco. So the season has definitely been a bit of a disappointment, but that was in the past, and currently we're in the present. We have the play-in right now against the Chicago Bulls. I expect it to be a pretty close game as both teams have kind of been neck and neck throughout the season. They've kind of gone throughout the course of the season dealing with the same things, whether it's been injuries or new acquisitions near the trade deadline. So their team has kind of looked the same throughout the course of the season. This is obviously a big narrative game, as you mentioned. DeMar DeRozan's coming back to Toronto. It's also important to mention Mark Eversley is going to be back. He's currently the general manager of the Chicago Bulls. He was an assistant general manager with the Raptors for, I believe, 6 or 7 years. Chuck Swirsky is going to be back. He's obviously the
Ooh.
TV commentator for the Bulls, and he was here with the Raptors for a long time. So shout out to Chuck. But aside from those storylines, I expect a really close game. I expect a really entertaining game. There's lots of matchup stuff that we can get into later. But yeah, it should be really fun and entertaining. Like I said, both teams have kind of been neck and neck this season in terms of offense and defense, and they have similarities. Like they're both not great shooting teams. They both waver on the defensive end. They do have different strengths and weaknesses. So Toronto, for example, like needs to get on the glass for sure to win. They need to win the possession battle. But Skip will get into that in a bit. But yeah, I expect it to be a really exciting game, pretty close game. And yeah, Skip, what do you think?
Well, Skip, I'm going to ask you
All right.
right there. Based on what Charlie just said, the offense to the defense, the basic of the pace of the game, the way the Raptors play, the way the Chicago Bulls play, where do you see the advantages and disadvantages for the Raptors? Like, where can they lose? Where can they win? Obviously, we all know it's in transition, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't come on every possession. So that's one of their calling cards, like you always say. So tell me about the advantages and disadvantages that the Toronto Raptors have for the Chicago Bulls in order for them to pull out a win and make it into the playoffs.
Well, make it into the next game of the plan. Yeah, so I think it's kind of interesting because I kind of almost think of the Raptors and Bulls as kind of these twin teams. They're kind of like mirror images of each other almost.
You know what? Sorry to cut you off. You say that, but in reality, Chicago is actually the sister city to Toronto. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, by the lake, I guess. Yeah, but if you look at even last year, right? Last year, Bulls won 46 games. The Raptors won 48. They were just ahead of the Bulls. Then you go forward this year, neither team made massive changes to their roster. They both kind of expected to improve internally a lot. And it didn't kind of happen. Both teams fell way off. Raptors fell down to 41 wins. The Bulls fell down to 40 wins. So we're seeing kind of a similar arc there. And even to some extent in terms of how they play. I mean, the Raptors obviously really thrive in the possession game. That's basically their whole strategy is to win the possession game. Whereas the Bulls are kind of just like a solid possession team. They don't turn the ball over a ton. They force some turnovers. Now, the one place that I think the Raptors can really capitalize is on the offensive glass. I think that's where they really do make their hay in the possession battle. And you kind of see that the Raptors and the Bulls have sort of opposite strengths, where the Raptors kill the offensive glass. The Bulls are an okay defensive rebounding team, but they don't really get on the offensive glass on the other end. And the Raptors struggle to defensive rebound. So I think you look at that that almost could be a trade-off, but then you think of the addition of Jakob Poeltl, right? And Poeltl kind of really might make that rebounding battle really tilt a little more in the favor of the Raptors. That said, I think the Bulls, they don't obviously take a lot of threes, but they make them at a pretty good percentage. Just in general, the Bulls are they have this thing where they don't take a lot of threes, they don't shoot a lot of free throws, but when they get to the line, they shoot well. When they get their threes off, they shoot okay. Whereas the Raptors just are chuckers, right? They're chuckers from every spot on the floor. They have poor percentages from almost every spot on the floor. But it's all about just getting as many shots up as possible. So like the Raptors will take 3 more 3-pointers a game and still end up with the same number of threes made. So that's kind of going to be where the possession battle is really going to be what determines this game. I think the Raptors are going to have to play their game and win the possession battle. They might not dominate it because the Bulls can push back a little bit, but just really, really have to win that possession battle just out of the gate. That's the number one priority.
Okay, can I weigh in here, guys?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Go on.
Okay, here's what I see. I see that the Raps and the Bulls are pretty much even when it comes to the stats. Obviously, there are some discrepancies. Like you just mentioned, offensive rebounding, the Raps are way better. Defensive rebounding, the Bulls are tied for 5th.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the 3-pointers, yeah, the Raps are chucking it up. The Bulls are more efficient. I get that. There's also that, like I alluded to earlier, the turnovers to transition points, right, which definitely are in the Raptors' favor. I honestly see the Raptors coming out on top, but the reason why I see that, despite all those stats, is I see, here we go, guys. Let's get into this like you alluded to, Charlie. Okay. The Raptors' potential starting lineup, the best that you will put out there, would be Freddie, Scotty, OG, Gary Trent, and Yuck. Now,
you forgot Pascal.
What about Pascal?
Yeah, Gary Trent's coming off the bench.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, my bad.
You got
Pascal,
4 out of 5.
Right, he'll be coming off at the 4. But then the Chicago Bulls, they also have, correct me if I'm wrong here again, okay, they have Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic, which are locks.
Mm-hmm.
Now get into the little bit of discrepancy right here, because we're not sure. We don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not the coaches on the teams. We can't tell you.
I'm
okay?
pretty sure Caruso's a lock too. Caruso's pretty much a lock.
Caruso and Patrick Beverly.
Yeah.
can possibly be starting. Now, how would this affect the pace of the game from the Chicago Bulls to the Toronto Raptors? Would it be because if the Chicago Bulls, let's face it, if they were to put that lineup on the court, they would obviously be smaller, but they might be a little bit quicker. The Raptors, if they put up that lineup, they might be bigger. They might be able to dominate in the paint because Vucevic can't do it all down there. So where do you guys? This is just throwing it out to you guys. Here, take the ball. Okay, this is just throwing it out to you guys. Where do you see the Raptors trying to take advantage of the mismatches in certain positions for the starting lineup? Because they did do well against that last game against Milwaukee. Bench mob. I was so happy. I finally got a little bit of retribution. But with the bench coming together and doing that, but based on the starters that are going at each other in the matchups, where do you see the Raptors lining up in what the Chicago Bulls have, how they're going to face up?
Okay, Charlie, you can take it first.
All right. So like you said, the projected starting lineup for the Chicago Bulls is going to be with two guards, with Alex Caruso and Patrick Beverley, and then Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic. Now, Billy Donovan, the head coach of the Chicago Bulls, did hint the other day that he might decide to start Patrick Williams in the front court in replacement for Alex Caruso. Personally, I just believe that's a little bit of a bluff. I think the Bulls... Yeah, I think the Bulls will go with that two-guard starting lineup. However, it is important to note that with the Bulls using two guards, like you said, King, the Raptors have the size to match up really well. And what oftentimes happens with the Bulls using two guards is Alex Caruso has had to guard a lot of power forwards this season because Nikola Vucevic tends to play to the level of the screen. The Bulls don't like to keep him in the paint. So that means there's a clear matchup discrepancy between Pascal Siakam and Alex Caruso. So if the Bulls do decide to start two guards, I expect the Raptors to use Pascal Siakam to be the focus of their offense, coming out of the gate, whether it's post-ups, whether it's in the pick and roll, whatever the situation may be. I expect Pascal Siakam to be the focal point of the offense and force the Bulls to make the adjustments to get Pascal off the ball. Like I mentioned with Nikola Vucevic, he likes to play to the level of the screen. So this is a great game for Fred VanVleet to be really, really effective, whether it's with the pull-up three-pointer or in the pick-and-roll game with Jakob Poeltl. Whether it's in the pick-and-roll game, Jakob Poeltl will tend to play further to half court with Vucevic pulling out, which leaves the rim more open for cutters who are great, like OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. Depending on the lineup, it could be Gary Trent Jr., it could be Precious Achiuwa, whoever it may be. So definitely, I expect the Raptors to be attacking the paint out of the pick and roll. And this would also be a great game for Fred VanVleet, like I said, to get it going from three, because there hopefully will be a lot of open looks with Nikola Vucevic out from the paint.
Skip, thoughts?
I think that was really well said. I was going to sort of lean into Pascal as well, because I think that's the obvious mismatch there. It'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of defensive coverages, like if they have Pat Bev chasing around a VanVleet, or if they put Caruso on them, and if they put Caruso on him, then who guards the other guys, right? So Pascal is a great candidate to charge the paint. I think also Scotty has a huge size mismatch in that alignment. So I think that could be kind of a situation where if they are, because the Bulls are a fairly good defensive team overall. So if they are able to kind of turn the tap up on Siakam just a little bit, whether it's Caruso, whether it's Patrick Williams, I think Scotty might be a guy who can really take advantage of a size mismatch in that matchup. I think those are the two that I would lean towards. Obviously, I think the nice thing about the Raptors is, and we haven't seen enough of this year, is that they can go in any of five directions, right? Whenever they find the mismatch, they can exploit it. All five guys in the starting lineup are capable of doing some things to twist and bend the defense. But obviously, I mean, if it was working as well as we would like it to work, they wouldn't be in a playing game. They'd be in the playoffs. But yeah, I think Scotty is kind of the guy that I'd be looking at after Pascal.
I think
Skip, I love you, Skip, because that's exactly based on what Charlie just said and what you're saying, where you're going right now, is honestly, I think the X factor can be Scotty Barnes. Like Charlie, you just said Pascal can be a focal point, the main focal point. You also did speak about the pick and roll with Freddie and Yuck. But honestly, I think if that potential starting lineup that we're talking about right there that we just mentioned, Skip, you just nailed it right there on the head. Come on, brother. Scotty has the size advantage. Charlie, you talked about taking points in the paint. Scotty can do that, okay? Which opens up Freddie, like you just said, from the outside. But honestly, I love your idea about Pascal. Obviously, every team that plays against the Toronto Raptors, they're going after Pascal. That's their main guy that they have to go after, right? Because that's the number one player on the team, according to the other teams, right? But once Scotty can open up right there, and then you got Yuck making the moves on the pick and roll, right? And it opens up Freddie, opens up Gary, it opens up OG, it opens up Boucher, it opens up the guys on the bench, it opens up so much, it unlocks. Skip, I love you for saying that about Scotty with that size advantage, because I guarantee you he could take Pat, Alex, he could take them directly into the paint. Even Levine, he could take them directly into the paint and change the course of the game. What do you guys think about that?
Let Charlie jump in here.
I expect, like you said about Scotty having the size advantage to take guys into the paint, that definitely could be an X factor, but I expect Scotty to play a little bit more off the ball in this game and be really effective as a screener or as a cutter. Like I mentioned, with Nikola Vucevic playing to the level of the screen, the Raptors tend to run their actions closer to half court, which gives a lot more space in the interior. So I expect Scotty to be highly active as a screener, which can allow guys who aren't in the pick and roll action, whoever else is on the court, whether it's OG Anunoby, Gary Trent, whoever it is, to come off of Scotty's screens. And we all know Scotty can set great screens, and he's a really promising screener. So I expect him to be very highly active in that department to get guys off ball and get easy paint points.
Skip, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just think that the thing I'm talking about is more as a counter, right? It's like once they go to the Pascal Fred thing, the Bulls are gonna react to that and adjust to that, and that's where you might see Scotty take over as a ball handler a bit more than I think to start the game. You're probably gonna see what you were talking about, where it's a lot of Pascal and Freddie, and the other guys playing off the ball. But in any playoff game, you're gonna have to make adjustments throughout the game, and I think this is a big game for Scotty to maybe take advantage when he's presented with the opportunities.
I think Skip, Scotty will be.
Sorry, go on, Charlie. Go on.
Sorry, just to add to Skip's point, I think Scotty will definitely be more of a secondary ball handler in this game. They'll come out of the gates with Fred getting the ball to start for sure. He also has more playoff experience, so that does make sense. I also expect Jakob Poeltl to play a lot more than he usually has. We've seen Nick Nurse kind of tend to bring Yak out of the games when there's opportunity to do so, but I would not be surprised if Jakob Poeltl plays north of 42, 43 minutes because Precious Achiuwa can be definitely up and down on the spectrum in terms of productivity. Chris Boucher doesn't have the size to match up with the Chicago Bulls, especially with Andre Drummond coming off the bench. So I definitely can see Jakob Poeltl playing a lot more minutes.
Well, so on that point, it'd be interesting if we see any Koloko at all. Probably not a lot, but any. And I think the Poeltl thing is valid for one reason, because they're gonna have 3 days off, right? Two full days off. And Yak only played, I think, 10 minutes in the Sunday game, so he'll be pretty fresh. So I think they can ride him pretty heavy.
So can we all agree really quick before we get into something else here? Can we all agree that the key players for the Raptors' success for this game is obviously Siakam, Freddie, Scotty, and Yak? Can we all agree on that?
And how OG can be defensively, because I think we all expect him to be the guy who guards DeMar DeRozan, and we can get into the defensive talk in a second, but Charlie, OG's going to be the key.
This is why I say you're a genius in a young man's mind, because this is what I wanted to ask you guys. My next question is, do you think the Raptors defense can handle what the Chicago Bulls offense has to provide, especially with DeMar DeRozan being one of the best mid-range shooters, right? Zach LaVine being, we all know, an amazing dunker, getting into the paint, Vucevic being down there in the paint, right?
Yeah.
We all know what they could do. Pat Beverly being a squeaky son of a bitch that runs around. Oh, Alex Caruso looking like Elmer Fudd in Space Jam. Part 1, not part 2. Let's not go there. But you know what I mean? Like they have these options. And do you think the Raptors defense can stand up to their offense? Because we just spoke about their offense standing up to their.
Well,
So
I'm gonna take this one. Chicago's actually not a very good offensive team this year. They fell off pretty hard from where they were last year. All their gains have been on the defensive end, and it makes sense. You talk about guys like Caruso, Patrick Beverly. They're not big offensive threats. So I think the Raptors are going to have to avoid letting DeMar get to the line for like 25 free throws. That would not be optimal, obviously. But I think the key guy they're going to have to figure out how to guard is LaVine, because I think if you're putting OG on DeMar, you don't really have a natural guy to guard LaVine. I mean, obviously Freddie can do it a little bit, but he's pretty short. Pascal can do it a little bit, but he's going to be spending a lot of energy on the offensive end. So they have options, but I think LaVine is sort of the guy I don't want Scottie guarding LaVine. Straight up, I don't.
Okay.
So I think they have options. I think they can slow down Chicago pretty easily, but if a guy like LaVine starts cooking, if DeMar starts going off in the mid-range, that's where you're going to have those lockdown guys actually step up and maybe you got to throw an OG on a LaVine, and then who guards DeMar. So that's where I'd be a little bit concerned, but overall I think the Raptors are capable of it. There's always the fear that someone goes off, right, for a big game.
I think the biggest thing with guarding the Chicago Bulls is knowing their strengths and knowing their weaknesses and knowing their kind of team profile. So I was looking at the numbers, and 2/3 of Chicago's shots come within the 3-point line. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. So the way to beat them is to force them to take shots they don't want to take, which is the 3-point shot. We know DeMar isn't a great 3-point shooter. We know Patrick Beverly has his ups and downs. We know Caruso has his ups and downs. And Nikola Vucevic has been the type of guy who has hurt the Raptors. They have had trouble guarding stretch bigs. But limiting Zach LaVine in the perimeter game is going to be huge. And like Skippy mentioned, OG will probably guard DeMar DeRozan. And throughout the course of the season series, the Raptors have doubled and trapped DeMar DeRozan all 3 games, the entire game. And he hasn't really had a great game. So I think in keeping to that strategy, it'll be really important to force Zach LaVine to be a creator, to not let him get his shot up, to limit that first explosive step, to secure that back line of defense in the perimeter, and force him to spray the ball out to the perimeter, to force guys to shoot who don't necessarily feel comfortable shooting the ball.
That is a high risk. That is a high risk strategy, though. But it's kind of how they play already. So yeah.
Before we get out of here, just real quick to what both of you guys just said. You guys were talking about the Zach LaVine and DeMar. OG, he's got to pick one. Just real quick, yes or no? What if you were to throw Boucher in that lineup with him? So it's a 2-headed monster on defense. Do you guys like that idea? Yes or no? Just real quick before we get out of here.
Well, I don't want Boucher being a primary defender on any of their guys. He's more backline defender, if anything. Yeah,
not a big fan of that. I think he's not the right size to match up well with the Chicago Bulls team, especially if they bring in the bench with Andre Drummond and Patrick Williams and try to pack the paint.
Yeah, you're right. I like that answer. Okay, guys. So before we get out of here, real quick, predictions on the game. And you know what? Just for shits and giggles, give me a score.
A score? Oh boy.
I think it's going to be a close game. I see Toronto winning, even though I can picture DeMar DeRozan hitting like one of those signature turnaround fadeaway jumpers to send the team home.
I can picture him missing one of those because I saw that a lot as a Raptors fan.
That's true. This time he's playing the Raptors though, so I could see the Toronto Raptors winning. I think they have a slight advantage. And for a score, let's say 102 to 97.
All right.
Oh my God. Skip, go on. Go ahead.
So I
Charlie,
think there's a few things going on here. First of all, I think the Raptors have a home court advantage, which is a huge advantage. I looked up NBA playoff teams in history. 65% of the time they win the game, just whatever game it is. So 65% advantage for the home team. I think Toronto being at home will be at a huge advantage in that category, and also just because they are the team between these two teams. They are the team that upgraded at the deadline. So even though they're only a game ahead of them in the regular season, overall they are a better team, I think, than the Bulls are. If you look at the larger body of work, Raptors were 18-12 since the beginning of February. Bulls were like 17-15, so it's not a huge gap. But I think the Raptors are the better team. And if you look at the 538 actually predictions for who's going to advance, they give the Raptors, I think, a 36% chance of making the playoffs or advancing in this game. No, sorry, making the playoffs. 36% chance of making the playoffs, and the Bulls only get like a 10% chance. So they really strongly favor the Raptors in this game. So I think, yeah, I'm pretty confident. I wouldn't say pretty confident, but I believe in the Raptors as long as they don't show up like they showed up on Friday against the Celtics, like they don't want to be there, like they're thinking about Cabo. If they come and they play proper Raptors basketball, I think the Raptors should win this game. I do think it'll be pretty close. I think the Bulls have some fight in them. I think the Raptors have some choke in them. It'll be a little nervy at the end. So I'm going to say I'll go a little lower. So maybe 95-91.
Oh, interesting. Okay, guys, Charlie, I love you, man. I said it yesterday and the day before when I found out about this. I said Raps 102, Chicago 97. That's exactly
I could see it.
Okay, so I like that we're basically on the same page. That's awesome. But guys, since we're short on time, and Charlie, you have things to do. And by the way, Shabbat Shalom, my friend. Okay.
Thank you.
You in this video currently or possibly listening to us.
Thanks for all the support. Thanks for keeping up with the pod and for following me on Twitter and interacting. I love interacting with you guys and hearing all of your thoughts and opinions and ideas and takes and so forth. So please keep going. You can reach me on Twitter at CharlieBenner19. I also do just want to mention I started my own Gutsy Walk campaign this year. And so far, I've raised almost $1,300 to help support IBD patients across Canada like me. So if you'd be willing, go check it out on my Twitter. And if you can donate, that would be amazing. And any support that I can get and any support that I guess IBD folks across the country can get would be very much appreciated.
More power to you, my man. Good for you for
Thank you.
helping those that need it. That's an awesome cause. And it's very great that you put yourself out there. And it's not us supporting you, man. You deserve it. You deserve all the flowers you get.
Thank you.
Okay? And thank you for being on the show. Skip, say something, but do it quick.
Well, we haven't really covered the DeMar comes back to Toronto angle, but I'm sure that'll get beat to death.
Cover that after the game.
That'll get beaten to death. So we'll see how he shows out. But yeah, I'm just gonna throw that out there. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that this week. You guys make sure to click that subscribe button, click the bell, because we will be putting out more content this week. There's going to be a lot we're putting out coming up very soon. We're going to be bombarding you like, I don't know, Freddie Van Vliet from the logo, just throwing it up. Just
onions, baby, onions.
No, salami and cheese.
Oh, I want some latkes. But anyway, guys, Charlie, thank you again. Skip, you already know what it is. I'll talk to you in a minute. So on behalf of all three of us, the one and only Charlie, send him your love. Make sure you donate. Make sure you guys help him out. It's a great cause. Make sure you do that, please. Okay? Skip, you know I got nothing but love for you, brother. So, and you guys know where to find me at King Hussein on all social media platforms. So on behalf of all three of us, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, and
peace.